Lo que sucedió contra las bases
What happened
estadounidenses
against the
en Irak
American bases
durante
in
la
Iraq
semana
over the last few weeks is a natural reaction by the Iraqi people and their forces of resistance to the despicable murder of martyr General Soleimani and martyr Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis, head of the Iraqi resistance. Our country had nothing to do with these attacks.
estamos observando estas
We are
actividades de
closely
Estados Unidos,
monitoring the activities
lo
and moves of
registramos
the
en el
Americas.
sistema de
We
recopilación
are
de
recording
inteligencia
them in our intelligence collection systems and we are monitoring them at all times. Our defensive forces are safeguarding our land, maritime, borders, and airspace. Important, this statement by Iran regarding what happens in Iraq. Hisham Walnus, our correspondent to the Middle East from Damascus, Syria, is bringing us an update. Hisham?
Hello, Ray. Greetings to your viewers. Indeed, the United States has complicated the withdrawal of its troops from 6 military bases, uh, and it has grouped most of its troops in Iraq. The Iraqis shares 2 military bases in the northeast of Iraq and in the Al Harid base in near Baghdad. We have to highlight that last Tuesday, the Al Harid base was evacuated in near Baghdad, and this base is known really as the host for the Abu Ghraib jail, where during the U.S. invasion in Iraq in 2003, there were images, public images, that of U.S. soldiers committing torture in that base. The U.S. said that they are evacuating troops and troops from the so-called coalition, supposedly to fight terrorists from the so-called Islamic State in Iraq. Hundreds of French military personnel were also evacuated from this base last Tuesday, and also hundreds of French soldiers started to be returned to their homeland out of fear for COVID-19 contagion after the spread of this pandemic in Iraq. However, these moves by the U.S. Require these troops to be redeployed, uh, indicate that the U.S. Does not want to does not want to hear the Iraqi requests, and several social organizations in Iraq and Iraqi forces like the popular mobilization groups, the U.S. have refused, has deployed the Patriot systems in the National Bishop base in Alambar, and these systems have been subjected to tests recently in Iraq against supposed hostile targets, especially Katyusha type missiles, which have been used against American US positions. Another in the fortified area in Baghdad after the assassination by the US of the Al Quds Brigade leader, which is the Qasem Soleimani, and the commander of the popular mobilization units, Al Muhandis, near the Baghdad International Airport. There have been over 20 attacks against American positions, and the U.S. is recognizing that Baghdad is no longer a safe place for its troops, but yet they still maintain the troops in Iraqi territory, and they have been described as occupation forces. And as I said, they are concentrating the troops dispersed around the country in 2 military bases, and they will use these bases against possible attacks by the Iraqi resistance. There's also reports that the U.S. is getting ready an attack against the popular mobilization units and the Iraqi army. And in the face of this situation, the popular mobilization unit will not sit tight and will even have made exercises of possible attacks by the United States. The positions of these 2 military bases strategic positions because they are near Baghdad and also close to the central west near the border with Syria. These are important positions to continue with the U.S. Troops against these Arab troops country. And these bases house hundreds of cells and terrorist groups which have been defeated in this Arab country. And that's why both authorities and the popular mobilization units say that the complete defeat of the terrorists will be achieved after the complete withdrawal of American troops and after they cease providing logistic support of these combatants from Daesh. Lastly, we have to highlight that there in another base was evacuated in northern Iraq and also in the east of the country near the border with Syria, the Al-Qam base, the Al-Kabara bases in the western Iraq. Meantime, Iran and Syria are, are looking with doubt and suspicion these American moves and also the redeployment from Iraq to Syria of military hardware for two bases that in bases near the oil fields in Syria and in areas rich in oil deposits. Uh, Instead of removing their troops from Syria and Iraq, the U.S. is acting against this wish and putting troops to consolidate access to those countries. Thank you so much for your detailed information. Until I see you again. And military intervention in Iraq has been one of the objectives in the United States for 17 years to take control of its oil fields and thus ensure its own energy supply, regardless of what the Pentagon calls collateral damage. On March 20, 2003, with the military support of Austria, Poland, and Denmark, the United States started the invasion of Iraq under the pretext of liberating the Iraqi people from oppression. Washington accused Saddam Hussein of possessing weapons of mass destruction and promoting terrorism in the region. With the capture of Hussein in December of that year and his death on December 30th, 2006, the number of attacks in Iraq increased 7 times only in the first 3 years. Al-Qaeda was made responsible for the bloodiest attacks. The invasion lasted until 2011, sparked a civil war in the Arab country and the emergence of terrorist groups such as the self-proclaimed Islamic State, Daesh in Arab, that expanded through the region. Analysts agree that despite Barack Obama's government orders for all American troops from Iraq in 2010, the presence of U.S. military forces in that nation maintained to prop up an allied government in the face of an ever-increasing Russian and Chinese influence in the Middle East. Up until 2011, the armed conflict in Iraq left 406,800 deaths. 60% of them were combat-related and of terrorist attacks, while 40% were due to collapse of the health system and the infrastructures that guaranteed the drinking water, food, transportation, waste management, and energy services. After the alleged declaration of the end of the war, the rise of the self-proclaimed Islamic State in Iraq led to an escalation of attacks, causing thousands of civilian casualties. By 2016, more than 120,000 bombing raids had been launched by the United States and its allies allegedly to combat Daesh operations. Mosul turned out to be the most devastated area. Since the assassination by a drone attack in Baghdad of influential Iranian general Qasem Soleimani and his Iraqi lieutenant Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis, anti-American sentiments have exploded and tensions escalated in the Persian Gulf. At the beginning of the year, the Iraqi parliament approved a resolution to terminate the presence of foreign troops in the Arab nation. It also requested the government to cancel its request for assistance to the American-led international coalition. President Donald Trump threatened to impose sanctions on Baghdad in case of the forced withdrawal if this military play takes place. We have made this in-depth introduction prior to our analysis
That's why we have invited from Doha, Qatar, Rafael Robles Gil Gossi, candidate PhD in Persian Gulf Studies at Qatar University, Masters in Islamic Studies from Hamad bin Khalifa University of Qatar, and politologist from UNAM University in Mexico. From Caracas is also Muaz Musa, member of the Central Committee of the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine. Both welcome to our critical move and thank you beforehand. Let me start with Rafael. Since he's geographically near the country under discussion today, Rafael, how do you view this recent move by the US to gradually, as they say, withdraw its troops from Iraq? When on the ground, what we see is that they are just redeploying their troops. They change, relocating, but without abandoning the Arab territory. Yes, thank you so much. Indeed, the U.S. troops are relocating what the U.S. call a redeployment, but this is a change of tactics. They have been dwindled when they are spread throughout the Iraqi territory, especially in the rural area. It's more complicated now. And after the assassination of General Qasem Soleimani, the Shia militias have been strengthened and they have gained legitimacy on the ground, and they have been very strong in their statements that U.S. occupation forces must leave, and they have proved already, they have proven they are attacked several U.S. positions. So this redeployment is owed to two factors. First, a change of strategy, but also to a weakening of the prior strategy, as long as the U.S. is not able to maintain a robust defensive position of its troops, which have been attacked by strategic forces and by the popular mobilization units. Therefore, this has caused a number of redeployments of, of Daesh in the border areas, out of the metropolitan areas, which becomes a difficult issue, especially for Iraqi security forces. The problem that the U.S. is redeploying to Baghdad and to Ain al-Assad base is that they are leaving everything else in the hands of the Iraqi forces, who are not sufficiently trained to face the guerrilla warfare by Daesh. What happens is that there is a consensus by large sectors that there is need for American presence. I mean, the Americans are generating a need for their presence, which has been already delegitimized over the last few months. Therefore, when they withdraw, many dwellers and some political sectors say we cannot allow the U.S. to leave. So this is the line of thinking that have been pursuing the U.S. A line of thinking that could be reinforced, taking into account the combinations of who will be leading the Iraqi government, who is accused of being servile to U.S. interests. And I want to go deeper into that later. Rafael, stay with us. Let us bring in Muaz Musa, member of the Central Committee of the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine, also an expert in Middle East affairs. Welcome, Muaz, as a connoisseur of this reality, of this geopolitical reality, and also as a person who has suffered the horror of the Arab world, to a large extent induced by the United States and Israel. I wonder, are you also part of this hesitation of the so-called withdrawal of U.S. troops from Iraq? Well, first of all, I want to salute the Iraqi people that today is celebrating 70 years, not celebrating, but marking 17 years of occupation by the United States. And this occupation has caused millions of
Iraqi lives, uh, and and leave the countries in the hands of terrorist gangs created by the United States and financed also by them. And today they are talking about a redeployment of some U.S. troops, but I want to assure you that all of this is part of the strategic game of the new Middle East that the U.S. wants to impose, wants to design, despite the willingness of the Iraqi people. I want to highlight that the resolution by the Iraqi parliament was very clear to expel all foreign troops from Iraq. The United States ignored this, and they are redeploying its troops. They are leaving rural areas, the areas which implied one way or the other in danger of being attacked by other forces. But the United States has deployed the Patriot systems because why now? Is it that they are getting ready for defend against a possible attack from Iran again? Because supposedly the popular mobilization units and the Iraqi resistance do not have other weapons than Katyushas, and those weapons do not need a Patriot system. Why now? Why are they deploying now the Patriot systems? And also, we have to understand the game being played by Israel, bombing several cities in Syria, alleging that they want to break this axis, Iraqi, Syria, and Iran, and the U.S. wants to redeploy its troops to face the new scenario that sooner rather than later will come, and the U.S. will have to face the Iraqi people. It's very important what you just said. Let's talk about the presence of a new cell, presumably of Iranian influence, for which the U.S. would be getting ready to face this cell. How do you view this? Well, first, I would like to go deeper on an issue that has to do with the media. I don't agree with using the term Shia militias. I, these are pro-Iranian militias combating the U.S., but it's the Iraqi people combating the U.S. It's a deep alliance, a strategic alliance with Iran and Syria. But it's not right to say pro-Iranian, or let alone because of being Shiite militias. So we are doing the bidding of the American people. They want to weaken and divide the American the Iraqi people into Shia and Sunnis. And even after the occupation in March, I believe strongly that all the Iraqi people is behind its interest to expel American troops. There's a lot of talk that all of this is a response to the assassination of Qasem Soleimani, but they forget that the assassination of Al-Muhandis, was the leader of the Popular Mobilization Unit, which is the leader that led the struggle against Daesh and other military that U.S. Supported and sponsored in terrorism within Iraq and Syria and the Middle East. I'm sure that the Iraqi people, regardless of the sect or the ethnic groups, is behind the idea of expelling the United States from Iraq and from the Middle East. Thank you so much, Moaz. Rafael, there was a reflection that has to do of the dependency of the reliance of the U.S. out of inability to fight possible guerrillas, and also because of the charges that the Iraqi government would do anything that they would do, because it is a government whose leaders have been educated under American ideology and placed there by the US. The question is, in order to wrap up this part of the analysis, would Iraq be condemned to having inside its territory forever and ever American presence? The political aspect is possibly as important as the military one. At this point, a few hours ago, the prime minister was accepted to replace Mr. Al-Surfi. The new prime minister in charge has been endorsed by the 8 Shiite militias and for all the government sectors, and even by the Sunni parliamentary majority. This is a very special moment in terms of Iraqi politics, in the sense that there is consensus that they cannot continue using Iraqi territory for their strategy against the Islamic Republic of Iran by the United States. This has been said by different sectors, different segments of the political spectrum, and this was clear in the joint statement by different militias and the visit by Ismail Hani, the representative of the Al-Qut militias. Has been shown by these groups, by the group Katab Hafez Shalaf, that they knew that the American intelligence is planning potential military strike in order to slow the advances in this area by the Iraqi government. Also, they have revealed several plans by the American intelligence for this deployment. Have to do with the U.S. 17 years later lost completely ground, and now they are changing the strategy. They're not going to matter to sacrifice to bring back 50% of their troops, leaving the other half in order to limit their scope to heavy weapons tactics to combat Iran. What they are worried about is that if the U.S. continue their anti-Iran Iraq strategy from Iraq, the U.S. is abandoning its commitment to stop the Islamic State, and it's allowing for the regeneration of Islamic State cells and to generate an additional conflict from the Shiite militias who have been effective in combating Daesh in the last few years. And also, Rafael, it could be that the fact that the United States has not been strong enough again vis-a-vis these militias to be able to perpetuate itself in its territory. Thank you, Rafael, for your time, for critical move. Likewise, Musa, thank you for being with us. We'll go to a break again. Remember, you can participate in our strategic move, which will be on screen for you to familiarize it. Will the U.S. definitively leave the U.S. and Iraq and the Middle East? We're going to a break and we'll come back.
¿Cómo se ha comportado la
How
presencia
has the
estadounidense
U.S.
en
presence been in the Middle East? How truthful is the U.S. gradually and definitely withdrawing from the region? Let's see. The United States began its troops' gradual withdrawal from the Middle East several months after President Trump declared his intention to reduce the number of soldiers in this conflict region. In October 2019, nearly 1,000 U.S. troops started their alleged withdrawal from northern Syria. This decision by Donald Trump was strongly challenged by both by Democrats and Republicans after the United States and Turkey agreed on a ceasefire in the region for 120 hours to allegedly facilitate the withdrawal of Kurdish forces Ankara labels terrorists. According to different sources, the alleged withdrawal of American forces was a strategy for troops relocation,
which has caused aggravated tensions in the region due to the increase of U.S. troops in the area. Various sources say that as a pretext in the present confrontation with Iran, Iraq, and Syria, Washington keeps about 20,000 soldiers in bases located in Jordan, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and Oman. This is a clear encirclement of Syria under the old pretext of combating terrorist groups operating in the area. While in Afghanistan, the American president was able to materialize so-called peace negotiations with the Taliban, an agreement that was signed under the condition of the United States gradually reducing its deployment in the country. Close to 4,400 troops started their withdrawal in March. The United States agreement with the Taliban is intended in a first stage to reduce American troops in Afghan soil from 13,000 to 8,000, as well as closing 5 of its 10 military bases. In conclusion, with more than 80,000 soldiers and 26 military bases distributed in the Middle East, the United States, far from totally withdrawing, intensifies its pressure in the region, mainly against Syria and the so-called axis of resistance composed of Iraq, Iran, and the Lebanese movement Hezbollah.
American troops are being redeployed in Iraq with the transference of military bases to the Iraqi government.
But as the old adage says, one swallow does not make a summer, and taking into account the slow pace of these actions brings about suspicions. According to expert Pablo José Leal, American imperialism, Israeli Zionism, and the Saudi are the expressions of the American dominion, even that implies millions of deaths. Time will tell. For today, we're closing the geopolitical board.